Hello, my name is Matt Bird, and welcome to the PublishU Podcast, where we feature the real life stories of authors from around the world. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Lee from Tyneside, who has written his second children's book called Embleton the Curious Cat. Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Matt.
So, you're not a professional author, although you're a very good author. What is it you do professionally? Remind us all.
So I'm a doctor, so I'm a rheumatologist, and I work in I've been working in Northumberland Healthcare Trust. So yeah, it's I do all my writing in my spare time.
Yeah, it's great to have a passion like writing that you can do, outside of working hours. I think for anybody to have a real a love that just unplugs them from the day to day is really, really powerful. And you have become somewhat of a serial children's author because this is your second book and you've got your third and fourth on the near horizon, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So, Martin, what inspired Embleton the Curious Cat? Is this actually a real cat or a made-up cat? Where did this character come from?
Um, okay, so I mean, I think I wrote my first book a while ago, and it took a while for me to get around to get it published. And by the time I think it was 6 years between writing it and actually getting it published, because I was very busy with work and doing other things. And then when I published it, I thought, well, actually, between that time, in my head, I thought of other ideas for a series of four. Because the first book, Lamley, is set in the spring, and I kind of had ideas for a summer book and an autumn book and a winter book. And so the second book, Embleton the Curious Cat, is set in the summer. So it's set on the same farm, Collingwood Farm, in the same area of the country, which is in Northumberland, in northeast of England. So some of the characters are the same, but there's new characters as well. And all the characters are named after local villages. So, like in Lamley the Lamb, Lamley's a little village in Northumberland. Embleton is quite a famous little village in Northumberland. Yeah, it's a village rather than a town. So it's a lovely little seaside town, which I remember I first actually kiked into back in 2012. It's a beautiful little place. So I think the second book, I had an idea of a cat, and I was thinking of names for a cat. And Embleton the Curious Cat, it had a nice ring to Embleton the cat. So the actual name comes from the village. The illustration is actually of our cat Harry, who was a rescue cat. Unfortunately, passed away last year at quite a young age because of kidney failure, which is a shame. But basically, I had photos of Harry. We sent them to the illustrator and I said, "Look, I'd like the cat to look like Harry," and he's done a fantastic job he looks identical to our rescue cat Harry. So that's all where it came from.
Amazing, beautiful. And so, Martin, these children's stories, are these children's stories that you write in your head, or are they stories that you tell your children because you're a father? Or do you just put pen to paper and just write them from, just on script first? How do they come about?
So they're in my head first. So the idea comes to my head, and it starts with, I guess, with an idea of a character on the farm. In this series, I've written a character on the farm, and then it sort of develops into, well, what would they be up to on that farm? And then I start thinking a bit more about the story, and I think if you speak to most children's authors, certainly, I don't know about sort of adult literature because I haven't written a huge amount of adult literature, but for children's books, a lot of people say, look, you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you have to have them all in your head first before putting on paper. But some of these books, certainly with Embleton, I had a good beginning in my head. I had a middle in my head of what would happen, and it was just lacking ending. So I wrote it all down and left it for a while and let it stew. And the ending sort of came at me in the middle of the night, and I managed to get the ending right because you need a good ending. So some of them, I have the beginning, middle, end in my head before I put them to paper. But some of them, quite often I'm lacking the ending and put it to paper. And if an ending comes, great. If it doesn't, then it will stay on the paper until it comes. But this one, sort of the beginning, the middle were on paper, and that was fine. But the ending was the bit which I found tough to get right. But the idea came to me in the end. So you have to trust the process.
So I mean, how much of your children are part of the process? I mean, do you write the book and then read them to your kids, or do you try the story out on them before you write it down?
Yeah. So I'm thinking back to my first story. Remember my first story when my daughter was three, and I just wrote it down on a computer and just read it to her. And I remember doing that. and then various people had heard it or read, I read it to them, and they loved the story, and they said, well, you need to get that published. So yes, I certainly always, once I've written them, I read them, because I've got a 10-year-old now, Orla, who I wrote Lamley and first story for, and I've got six. Well, my son's 6 as well, so that's just the right age group for my children's stories, really. So yes, I certainly try them out on my daughter and my son. And then, other children as well. They've got lots of friends. I read Embleton to a school, to a class, some classes in school, reception classes in school, before I actually wrote it. Put it down in ink, as it were. So yes, I try lots of children, lots of age groups, and go from there, really, because all the children's books are essentially sort of primary school age up to around 10, and I like to make sure that it covers all those age groups. There's something for all those ages in the books, really.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, without giving everything away, what does Embleton the Curious Cat get up to?
Well, so Embleton lives on the farm, obviously, Collingwood Farm, and I had the idea that Embleton was a curious cat, essentially, because I think we've got a couple of cats. Well, we had Harry, and we've also built Bilbo, both of whom are rescue cats, and both just get up to got up to all sorts of mischief. Bilbo still does, really. And so I just thought, well, if there was a cat on the farm, what sort of things would he get up to? And so I thought about, well, how he would interact with other characters, what he would try to, what he would do on the farm. And I think I remember a book, my mum reading me a book when I was a young child, called I'm Not a Cat, said an Emerald. And I went back and read that because that really stuck in my mind. And it just struck me that Emerald was a cat who thought he was human. And then it gave me the idea, well, actually, perhaps this cat thinks he's the boss of the farm, he controls the farm, and he tells the farmer to do the jobs and things like that. And it all went from there, really. And then I just got the idea of, after setting the scene where he's telling the farmer and the farmer's wife what needs to be done on the farm, what else could he go to the farm? And he actually gets in quite a bit of trouble with one of the other characters. And it just went from there. I don't want to tell the whole story away, but it involves a bull, Bamber the Bull. Bamber is another lovely coastal village just up from Embleton. And so it's a story about Embleton and Bamber the Bull, really.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, without telling us too much, give us a little inkling into books 3 and 4. What else happens on Collingwood Farm?
Yeah. So I say I've written the spring book, the summer book, the autumn book, and the winter book. The autumn book's called Pegwood the Peculiar Pig, and it's actually, I'd say, it's my most personal book. And the reason I say that is because this one is written for my daughter, really, because my daughter's got autism, and the idea sort of came to my head a bit before she was diagnosed and around the time of the diagnosis, because Pegswood's on the pig. Oh, sorry, Pegswood pig, and he lives on Collingwood Farm, and he's got autism, or he's neurodivergent, and he struggles with some things on the farm because the farm's very noisy. And my daughter really struggles with loud noise. She really finds it difficult when there's lots of loud noise going on. I have to say, I'm the same. Lots of if I go somewhere, when I was younger, I used to go and sit in in bars or pubs and things. There's loud noise. And now I can't do that, really. So I can certainly empathise with her. But she also, she loses her temper with her parents sometimes for no reason. And it's difficult for us to come to terms to why we've got a daughter shouting at us when we feel we've not done anything wrong. So we have to kind of understand where she's coming from and why she's losing her temper. And it's because she's trying so hard at places like school, and she comes home and it's a sort of safe space for her to shout at us, really. Um, and the way I look at it is I try and take it as a compliment. And that's what I tell my wife as well. We tell each other, well, it's because it's a safe space for her. She wouldn't do that at school. And she tries so hard at school. She comes home and she loses her temper at parents. So Pegswood's similar to Orla, really. He loses his temper with his parents, but for no real reason. Doesn't really know why. And then he feels very guilty about it, gets very upset. And some of his friends, although they're nice to him, he just feels a bit different and he doesn't really know why. And it's about him speaking to some of the other animals in the farm who he's friends with, trying to work out why he's a bit different and what makes him different. And essentially, it's a story about how his parents love him no matter what he is, really. So that's the third book. I won't talk so long about the fourth book because I'll be on here for ages. But the fourth book's about a grumpy duck called Featherston, and it's winter and it's cold and his pond's covered in ice. And again, without giving too much away, he doesn't understand idioms. So there's quite a lot of idioms in there, which are just phrases, and children don't actually have to understand what idioms are, but he doesn't understand idioms where all the other animals use idioms. So he gets very angry and very grumpy about that.
Amazing, really. I mean, it's children's books, but actually they're fascinating for adults. At least I find them fascinating. That just says a lot about me. But
Well, I
you
think it's
said,
important when you write a book, you've got to think, who's going to reread it to the children, and a lot of the time, say for younger children, it'll be the adults. And if you're reading a boring book to a child, or at least you find it boring, you don't want to put, even if the child puts in your hand, say, "Can you read it again? I can read it." You don't want to. So I try and make them interesting for adults too. So you put things like homonyms in, and make some of the idioms and things like that to make it interesting for everyone. Not just the children as well.
yeah, really clever. You said something a few minutes ago, Martin, that I'd love to come back to. You said, your wife and I have decided, your wife and you have decided that when your daughter shouts at you, you take it as a compliment because it means she feels safe.
Yes.
I just think that's such an incredible thing to have seen and to understand and embrace. And I wonder who did that for you? Was there someone in your life where you felt safe enough to shout or whatever, and they just loved you anyway?
No, I mean, I think I think we have to appreciate that all is built slightly different from us. She's unique. That's what makes, like, as I say in the book, that's what makes you you. Your parents talk to Pegs and they say, "Well, that's what makes you you," and that's what makes all. And we love her to bits, no matter what, really. But I think I mean, certainly I was growing up. I don't remember shouting and arguing with my parents like Orla does, and Jen, my wife, is the same. So I haven't got any direct comparison per se. And saying yes, it's a nice thing to take on. It's a nice thing that we try to do, but we're working on it. And believe me, we don't get it right all the time. When you've got a 10-year-old girl who's quite loud and quite feisty, shouting at you for what for no reason, it's very very difficult. But sometimes when we get angry, and rather than take out on her, we have to say we take a step back and we sort of try and remind each other that actually it's just her way of getting her whatever she's been so busy, she's so tired, whether she's hungry, it's her way of expressing her feelings, really.
Yeah.
And Pegswood in the book, again, there's idioms in the book. His mum talks about him being a bore, but he gets confused because between bore as in a male pig and bore being boring. And so there's lots of traits in Pegswood that I recognise in my daughter. And what was nice is that when I'm doing work, I've got lots of patients who are neurodiverse as well. So I've actually run a lot past them. When I've written the book, I've given it to them to have a read, and also my daughter to have a read. And they've gone through it and they said, "Oh, we really really like this. This really rings true. This sounds exactly how I feel." But they've also said, "Actually, I don't like this word. There are two words." Which I changed because they came back and said, "Well, I don't like this word. This word's been used, and I don't like the way that's phrased." I think some people might take that offense. Even one word, say, "Well, we don't use because there's other connotations," which I hadn't even realised. So it was really, really nice, really helpful, for my daughter to come back with it. And I remember one or two of my patients also when I was working abroad as a doctor, I gave it to them and they came back saying, "We love it, but I would change this word," and I found that really helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Well, today is all about Embleton the Curious Cat, but we've also got insights into Pegswood
Hmm.
and other characters coming up in this incredible four children's books. And if you haven't got the first one, then start here with Embleton the Curious Cat and enjoy these books for children, but actually fascinating for parents to read. So, Martin, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you all for listening to the PublishU podcast featuring the genuinely real life stories of authors from around the world. And if you're interested in becoming an author like Martin, please do visit our website, www.publishu.com. And if you enjoyed this broadcast, make sure you subscribe for more. Thank you all for joining us, and goodbye for now.